If you had asked me a year ago what happiness looks like, I would have pointed to our little house on the edge of town. White curtains that always smelled faintly of lavender. Two kids who filled the rooms with laughter and toys. And my husband, my best friend, my anchor, who would come home every evening with the same crooked smile that first made me fall in love with him in college. I ran a small family blog, sharing recipes, snippets of daily life, and photos of our cozy kitchen, or the kids building pillow forts. Strangers on the internet often commented that it looked like something out of a storybook. And for a long time, I believed it was. Our life wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Warm, ordinary, safe. At least, that's what I thought. It started with something so small, I almost brushed it off. One evening, I was putting away laundry and noticed a letter tucked in the back of my husband's drawer. It wasn't hidden exactly, just folded into an envelope without a name. I assumed it was some old bill or a receipt he'd forgotten. But when I reached for it, he suddenly walked into the room. He never startles easily, but that night, he did. His voice was calm, but his hand was just a little too quick when he took the envelope, saying it was work stuff and shoving it into his pocket. I laughed it off, made a joke about him being mysterious, and he smiled in return. But I couldn't shake the way his eyes avoided mine. After that night, I started noticing little things I had never paid attention to before. Nothing loud or obvious, just threads that, when tugged, began to unravel the neat picture I'd held in my mind. His phone, which used to sit face up on the counter, was suddenly always in his pocket. He took calls outside, even in the cold, with the door barely closed behind him. Once I heard his voice shift, soft, almost unfamiliar, as he spoke quickly before hanging up when he realized I was nearby. Then there were the nights he couldn't sleep. He'd sit in the living room long after midnight, the blue glow of the TV flickering on his face, while he stared at nothing. When I asked what was wrong, he always said the same thing, just tired. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to tuck these doubts away like dust under a rug. But the more I tried, the more they seemed to grow. The truth didn't come crashing down in one dramatic moment. It slipped in quietly, like a draft through a window I thought was shut. One afternoon, while the kids were napping, I was editing photos for my blog. His laptop sat open on the table beside me. Normally, I never touched it. Privacy was something we respected without question. But a notification popped up on the corner of the screen. An email. The subject line froze me. Regarding your past case. I knew I shouldn't, but my hand moved before my mind caught up. I clicked. The words blurred together at first, but the longer I read, the colder I felt. It wasn't about work. It wasn't about money. It was about him, about something he had been involved in years ago, something serious enough that lawyers and records were still attached to his name. I closed the laptop as if it had burned me. My chest felt tight. My husband, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, had an entire part of his life I'd never even glimpsed. For the rest of that day, I moved like a ghost in my own home. I cooked dinner, helped our daughter with her spelling, laughed at our son's silly faces, but inside, my stomach churned. How could I not have known? We'd built a life together, shared everything from grocery lists to dreams for the future. And yet this enormous piece of him had been hidden away. Part of me felt betrayed, almost foolish, like I had been living beside a stranger. But another part, the part that remembered every act of kindness, every late-night talk, every moment of safety he'd given me, kept whispering that he was still him, still the man who rocked our babies to sleep, who carried me through postpartum blues, who kissed my forehead when he thought I was asleep, love and shock twisted together. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house finally quiet, I sat across from him at the kitchen table. My hands trembled against the wood. I need to ask you something, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. And I need you to be honest. He froze, fork halfway to his mouth. For a moment, I saw a flicker of fear cross his face. The same look from the night I found the envelope. I saw the email, I admitted, about your past case. The silence between us stretched so long I thought I might scream. Finally, he put the fork down and leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling, as though searching for words. You weren't supposed to find out like this, he said quietly. I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how. Something in his tone made my chest ache. It wasn't denial. He told me everything that night, piece by piece, haltingly, as though each word cost him something. A mistake he made years before we ever met. Not violence, not betrayal of another person, but something serious enough to change the course of his life. He had carried it like a shadow, through college, through our marriage, through every ordinary day we thought we were living. When he finally stopped, the weight of it hung between us. My hands were clenched in my lap, nails biting into my palms. "I didn't want this to touch you," he said, "or the kids. I thought if I left it behind, if I became someone better, maybe I could protect you from it." And there it was, the fork in the road. I could walk away, convince myself I'd been deceived and couldn't forgive, or I could stay, knowing the truth, carrying both the love we'd built and the secret that had been buried beneath. Though I sat there, staring at the man I loved, and felt both paths pulling at me. I didn't give him an answer that night. I couldn't. After he went to bed, I stayed in the living room with the lights low, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock. Every corner of our home seemed to whisper memories. His hands helping our daughter learn to ride her bike. His voice reading bedtime stories. His laugh echoing during pancake breakfasts. Those weren't lies. Those were real. But now, layered beneath them, was this other reality I hadn't known existed. The next morning, I looked at him differently. Not with hate, but with the heavy awareness that he was no longer the flawless man I had once believed him to be. He was human, flawed, haunted, and yet still mine. I found myself caught between two instincts: the urge to protect my children from anything that might threaten their world, and the urge to protect the man I still loved, even from his own past. In the days that followed, I watched him more closely than ever before, not suspiciously, not with anger, but with a sharpened awareness. Every smile, every word, every small gesture felt like a test. Could I still trust him? He didn't try to hide anymore. His phone lay on the counter again. He volunteered where he was going, what he was doing. He looked me in the eyes, steady, but almost pleading, as if silently asking, "Can you still see me the way you did before?" Sometimes I wanted to snap, to ask why he hadn't told me sooner. Other times I wanted to hold him and tell him it was all right. My emotions swung like a pendulum, leaving me exhausted. One night, when he reached for my hand, I didn't pull away, but I also didn't squeeze back. Trust, I realized, doesn't return in a single moment. It has to be rebuilt, brick by brick. It finally happened, one evening after the kids were asleep. We sat on the couch, the glow of the lamp soft against the walls, and I told him everything. Every fear, every question, every ounce of doubt. "I feel like I don't know who you are," I admitted, my voice breaking. "And yet at the same time, I know you better than anyone." How do I hold both of those truths? He didn't rush to answer. He just listened, his hand resting quietly on his knee. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but steady. "I can't erase what I did. And I can't go back and tell you sooner, though I wish I had. But I can promise you this: who I am now, who I've been with you and the kids, that's the truest version of me, not the man I was before." There were tears in his eyes, and something in me softened. Not because the pain vanished, but because I could see he wasn't trying to excuse himself. He was asking me to decide if I could live with all of him, the past and the present. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. I caught myself replaying the revelation over and over, wondering if my love was enough to withstand it. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to notice the smaller things again. The way he made the kids laugh, how he quietly supported me when I overextended myself with the blog, how he still left little notes in my lunch bag, like he had when we first started dating. One afternoon, our daughter asked him to play in the yard. I watched them from the kitchen window. His laugh rang out, carefree, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the warmth of our life pushing the shadow back a little. It didn't erase the past, but it reminded me of the present. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other, day after day. I realized that acceptance didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean pretending the secret had never existed. It meant seeing him fully. The man who had made mistakes, the man who had grown, and the man who loved us fiercely. Despite his flaws, I started to speak about it less in anger, and more in quiet acknowledgement. "Your past is part of you," I told him one evening. "It doesn't define us, but we can't ignore it either." He nodded, relief and gratitude mixed on his face. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Trust could be rebuilt, not through denial, but through honesty, presence, and willingness to forgive, even when the past was painful. Rebuilding our connection wasn't instantaneous. We started small. Late night talks about dreams, weekend walks with the kids, sharing the little worries that had once seemed too trivial to mention. I found myself laughing more freely with him again. The tension that had gripped our home, lessening bit by bit. We began including the kids in small rituals that reminded us all of togetherness, baking cookies on Sundays, building blanket forts, and reading bedtime stories aloud as a family. Each shared moment was like a stitch, weaving back the warmth and security that had felt fragile after the revelation. I realized that love was resilient, but it required intention. We had to choose it daily, acknowledge the past, and still make room for joy and laughter. Months passed, and the tension that once lingered in our home gradually softened. The secret, though still present in my mind, became a part of our story rather than a shadow that defined it. I noticed my husband more. The way he always remembered the little things. The way he supported me through the blog and the kids. The quiet moments when he simply existed as my partner and friend. We started planning small trips, taking turns cooking favorite meals, and laughing until our sides ached over the silliest things. Trust had returned, not as a fragile illusion of perfection, but as a deeper, steadier current running through our family. We believed that accepting the past didn't weaken love. It strengthened it, giving it a foundation that could endure both mistakes and forgiveness. Looking back, I understand now that life and love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing to stay, even when the picture cracks. It's about holding each other through mistakes, regrets, and secrets, and finding a way to weave them into the life we share. Our home still smells of lavender. The kids still fill the rooms with laughter, and my husband still greets me with that same crooked smile. But now, beneath the comfort and routine, there is a quiet strength, a trust rebuilt on honesty, resilience, and the knowledge that love can survive even the shadows of the past. We are still us, imperfect, human, and wholly committed, and for now, that is enough.